This is your madness meeting.
This one was.
Yeah. Jamen, jeg kan jo ikke se den, når jeg står her. Så jeg skal ned op. Ja, okay, fint.
It's very high tech.
It's like a storiness. It's always. But they talk not happening this.
The only other thing I can't give them any more today. Yeah, that's right.
It looks very professional. Like a singer.
There's actually a gift to the center from the group that was here this weekend. They raised 6,000 kroner to buy this microphone. Well, they're going to buy one similar that we can also use for the basic program. And so it's very generous of the students.
Okay, so let's begin by doing prayers. So we'll do the prayer of refuge and release. Do that 3 times. Maybe we can do it 1 time in English, 1 time in Tibetan, and then 1 time in English. I go for refuge to the land of light, to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the memories I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. Sangye Charan Sangye Charan Chajo Arduyanmi Japsuchi Kare Janyan Dive Sanambi Dala Vinchu Sangye Navashu. I go for refuge until I am enlightened, to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. And the 4 visual thoughts. May all sentient beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May all sentient beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May all sentient beings be inseparable from the happiness that is free from suffering. May all sentient beings abide in equanimity, free from attachment and anger that holds some rules and other systems. Seventh prayer, which is to build up or healing merit, positive energy, and purify or clear away negative energy. Reverently and prostrate with my body, speech, and mind, I I send clouds of every type of offering, actual and imagined. I declare all my deeds and actions accumulated since the beginningless time, and rejoice in the merit of all holy and ordinary beings. Please remain until the end of cyclic existence. I turn the wheel back for living beings. I dedicate my own merits and those of all others to the great enlightenment. So let's recite the prayer of the Buddha one time, and then the mantra below it a few times. You can imagine light flowing into you from the Buddha. Actually, there are many Buddhas, so imagine light flowing into yourself from all the Buddhas, and it blesses your mind, it purifies your mind, it helps your mind develop towards enlightenment. Nama Tama Chomende Deshin Shepapa Shoma Yantapa Sope Sami Aya Shakya Tupava Shavata Chuto Kyatsu Shivo Om Muni Muni Mahamuni Soha 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 Om Muni Muni Mahamuni Soha. So I thought we would do some meditation. So we've been looking at compassion for the last couple of weeks, and last week we started looking at self-compassion, compassion for oneself, and that will be the main focus of the class tonight. And so I thought to do a meditation. This is inspired by Kirsten Neff. She's an American psychologist who has done a lot of research on self-compassion and wrote a book about self-compassion and does a lot of seminars and other work related to that, helping people to develop more self-compassion. So the meditation we're doing is based on a meditation that she teaches, and it's called affectionate breathing. So the idea is to do breathing, normal breathing meditation, but adding a feeling of affection, compassion, kindness towards oneself and others. So that might be a nice way to start. So first of all, make yourself if you can, keep your back straight, because that helps the mind be more clear and focused. Other than that, let the rest of the body relax as much as possible. And to help with the relaxation, take 3 long, deep breaths, breathing in deeply, pausing for a moment, and then exhaling slowly. When you exhale, imagine any tension in your body or your mind going out with the breath. So try to release or let go of all tension in your body and mind. So do that for 3 breaths, and then just go back to normal breathing. So just breathe normally, allowing your body to breathe on its own without you trying to control the breathing. Just let the body breathe. And see if you can notice where it is in your body that you feel the breath most strongly. Is it in your chest or abdomen or around the nostrils? And just let your awareness rest in that place, and just in a gentle way, not a forceful way. Just be aware of the breath as it's coming in and going out. Have a little bit of a smile in your mouth. Just let the corner of your mouth turn up a little bit. And see if you can notice if this has any effect on your mind. So as you're breathing, imagine that when you exhale, you're breathing out kindness, caring, compassion to others, to the world. And as you're breathing in, you're also breathing in kindness, compassion, caring from others, from the world, from the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. So try to just have that awareness with each breath. Breathing in kindness, breathing out kindness, universal kindness, kindness that extends to everyone, both yourself and others. So don't worry if you're not able to actually feel a sense of kindness and compassion. Don't push yourself to feel that way. Try to just let your mind be natural. Just try your best to have this feeling of kindness with each in breath and with each out breath. And if your mind wanders away from the breath, which it probably will, don't be unkind to yourself and get impatient with yourself. Instead, just gently and in a kind way, disengage your mind from the other object, whatever it is, and gently bring it back to the breath. And try to do this while continuing to feel kindness and caring and compassion for yourself and for others. Also, see if you can feel a sense of appreciation for the breath itself, just for the fact that we are able to breathe in and out, which means that we're alive. If we were not able to breathe, we wouldn't be able to continue living. It's feel grateful, thankful, just for the breath continuing to come in and out. So again, try to stay with each breath as it's coming in and going out. And allow this awareness of the breathing to help your body and mind become more and more relaxed and peaceful. And any thoughts that arise in the mind, just let them go, put them aside. You can always think about them later if you need to, but decide that for now you're just going to stay here in this present moment and present place, just watching the breath coming in and going out. So the meditation will end soon. So try to spend the last few minutes of the meditation really trying to stay with the breath. And to really pay attention to the breath coming in and the breath going out. And this feeling of kindness, compassion, caring, coming in and going out with the breath. A few days ago, I read a story on the BBC News about a doctor on the island of, I don't know how to say it, Lampedusa. It's the Italian island that's, I think it's the closest one to Africa. So many of them migrants, immigrants, refugees, I don't know what to call them, coming from Africa. That's the first place they land. And this doctor, his name is Pietro Bartolo. He's 60 years old, and he's the chief doctor on this island. And every time there's a boatload of migrants landing on the island, he's there to greet them and take care of the medical needs of the people and give clothes and toys to the children and so forth. So he's like, he's just a really loving and compassionate person. And he's been doing this over the last 20 years and has met 250,000, that's a quarter of a million migrants, each and every one of them. And yet he continues to be passionate about saving lives. Doesn't sound like he's had a burnout, even though he's physically quite overwhelmed. But he just has this incredible passion about taking care of all the people. And it was just beautiful to read this story and how he deals with, especially the children, you know, being like Father Christmas, this wonderful, caring, compassionate person. So I think it's really nice to read stories like that because in the news, so much of the news is about the bad things, the horrible things, all the wars and the terrorism and the violent crime and so forth. And if you read the news, pay attention to the news, it's quite easy to become kind of disheartened and even maybe have a cynical view of human beings, you know, and think, oh God, human beings are so horrible. We are so horrible, harming each other, harming the planet, and so forth. But I think it's important to recall that probably, my guess is, most of the human beings on this planet are actually not engaging in horrible things. I don't know if there's anybody who's done statistics on this. I guess it would be hard to do. But now there's about 7.5 billion people on this planet. And if you think about it, each one of those people probably has many interactions every day with other people, you know, with their family and their friends and their people they work with, and also just strangers when they're going around traveling on the train or on the street or at work and in supermarkets and so forth. So there's just a lot of interactions between human beings. And my guess is that most of those interactions are peaceful ones. You know, people aren't harming each other. They're at least leaving each other alone, not harming them. And then on top of that, there's many cases of people helping each other, like parents taking care of their children, teachers taking care of their children, and so forth, and then grown-up children taking care of their parents and their aunties and uncles and so on and so forth, and their neighbors and their friends. So I think really there's a lot of kindness and caring that takes place between human beings. And that's my sense. What do you think? Do you think that there's more of that kind of behavior than there is violent and harmful, you know, kind of behavior? I think so. I think so.
Yeah.
And I think that's why the harmful kind of behavior gets in the news. It's because it's like shocking. It's so startling when somebody kills another human being, does something hurtful or violent. It's like, you know, we have to, you know, put that in the news. Whereas all the kind and compassionate, or at least non-harmful behavior, that's just like so ordinary. So we just take that for granted. So it doesn't get in the news. People wouldn't watch the news if that's all it was. So I don't know, for me it's helpful to think that way, and also to pay attention, you know, like pay attention to these acts of kindness, even just the ordinary ones every day, you know, parents taking care of their kids and people taking care of each other and so forth. So we can actually, if we open our eyes and pay attention, we can see that happening all around us all day long. So, and then of course there's these stories like about this doctor. So I think it's really good it's good to know what's going on in the world, the terrible things, so that we can have more compassion for the suffering. I think it's also really important to not only focus on that, but also focus on the kindness and the compassion that's there. Is there a problem?
Yeah, it's trusting them
Cheek.
Is it touching the cheek?
Yeah, I hear some noise,
Me too.
but it's
I
not
hear it.
touching my neck.
I hear it in the speakers.
Well, I can hear it too. I thought maybe it was the wire.
I think it's
Overly
because
sensitive.
It's in use.
Is this happening on the weekend?
No.
Still doing it. I can't move. I just breathe. Don't move. Okay.
Let's just continue.
I'll try to not move too much.
Yeah, fine.
And then when we do notice these acts of kindness, I think this is a way of getting in touch with our own kindness and compassion. You know, it's like when I think they call this mirror neurons in neuroscience, right? Mirror neurons? Mirror neurons. It's like when you see somebody else showing an emotion or whatever, then it kind of stimulates that same emotion in yourself, something like that. But anyway, we do experience that, you know, when you see somebody else being kind, if you really pay attention to that, you know, it can bring up a sense of that same feeling in yourself. It kind of inspires your own kindness. So I think it's good to do that. I think that's one way we can increase and cultivate our own seeds of kindness and compassion. Is to really notice and enjoy and appreciate and rejoice in the kindness that others are showing. Okay, so last week I was talking about the benefits of compassion and also started talking about some of the obstacles to compassion, states of mind that can arise in us and block our compassion. So one of these is, of course, cruelty, which is the total opposite of compassion. Also anger and hatred. These are also obstacles because you can't really have compassion at the same time that you have anger and hatred. They're just like opposite. And then I also looked at self-centeredness, this attitude of, you know, me, I am most important, I'm the center of the universe, and so forth. So that's an obstacle to compassion as well as to love, because if we're so much focused on and obsessed with ourselves, then it's an obstacle to opening up to others and doing things to be helpful to others. And I had asked the people over here to get into little groups and discuss a topic, which was how can we decrease this attitude of selfishness or self-centeredness, but at the same time preserve a sense of self-compassion, compassion for ourselves. And actually that's kind of a difficult topic, so if any of you were here and were having that discussion and you found it difficult, it's not surprising. It is difficult. I think it takes quite a bit of thought and reflection and also looking into our own experience to be able to know how to do this. But I thought to share some things from this book I mentioned last week, which is called A Fearless Heart by Thupten Jinpa, who has been a translator for the Dalai Lama for many years, and he's now becoming more of a teacher in his own right. So he actually wrote a book about compassion, how to develop compassion. And there's a whole section in here on self-compassion, how to generate more self-compassion. So there's some really interesting things to say. It says this chapter is about what self-compassion is and why it is good. But there is so much misunderstanding about it that I would like to clarify a few things. It's true that we are happier when we are less self-focused and more oriented toward the world. But self-compassion is totally different from narcissistic self-absorption. So I think this is what some people may think, that, you know, self-compassion means you're just, you know, self-centered and self-absorbed and you only take care of yourself. So he says that's not true. That truly self-compassionate people take care of themselves while being attentive to the feelings and needs of those around them. In fact, the mental and physical health that comes from being kind to ourselves enables us to take better care of other people. When we are self-centered, on the other hand, we are so caught up in our own world that we don't have room for anyone else. You see, there is a difference between being totally self-focused, self-absorbed, and having self-compassion, because if you're truly self-compassionate, if you really are compassionate toward yourself, you are also compassionate towards others. So it's not that you ignore others and only focus on yourself. And he says, if you are kind and compassionate with yourself, this will help you to be happier and healthier, physical and mental well-being. And then that, you're in this happy and healthy state of mind and body, that will enable you to take better care of others. Actually have more energy to take care of others. So the two kind of support each other. Being compassionate to yourself helps you to be more compassionate to others, and being compassionate to others also helps you to be compassionate to yourself. So they're not like the same thing. So I think that may happen in our tradition because, especially in the Mahayana tradition, there's this term self-cherishing, the self-cherishing mind, which is said to be, like a terrible state of mind, like an enemy, something that is a big obstacle on the Bodhisattva's path, an obstacle to attain enlightenment. So we have to really fight against the self-cherishing mind. It's like really, really bad. And so I think this might make it more difficult for us to be open to the idea of self-compassion, because when we think, oh, wait a minute, if I'm compassionate to myself, doesn't that mean I'm cherishing myself and being self-cherishing? I think this could be one reason why people might have some resistance to the whole idea of self-compassion. And also, when we do try to work on decreasing the self-cherishing attitude, that bad guy, then we might go too far and end up being mean to ourselves, hating ourselves, and unkind to ourselves, and even denying or neglecting oneself. And this is particularly a problem for people who already have self-hatred. Like there's many, many people in the West who already, maybe from childhood, have a tendency to be unkind to themselves, to hate themselves, to be mean to themselves. So they already have that tendency, and then they need, Buddhism here about how bad the self-cherishing attitude is. They may even become even more self-hatred, self-hating. In fact, I couldn't find it later, but some time ago I read an article by Pema Chodron where she says that the problem in the West isn't so much self-cherishing, but self-hating. That's actually the big problem we have in the West. Although in this book of Thupten Jinpa, he says they've done research in a number of different countries, and they find that it's not only Western people who have a problem with self-compassion. They also find, actually in Taiwan, I was surprised about this, there's a lot of Buddhists in Taiwan, and people in Taiwan have even more problem with self-compassion than Americans do. But in Thailand, on the other hand, the people in Thailand seem to do quite well at being compassionate to themselves. So anyways, the point is it's not just a Western problem. It's found in other countries, other cultures as well. So another maybe obstacle that some of us might have to the idea of self-compassion is because it's not normally talked about in the traditional teachings. Even if you read Longren books, Tsongkhapa's teachings and so forth, you don't hear him talk about compassion for yourself. We're told that we need to have compassion for others, for all other sentient beings and so forth, but there's no mention of compassion for yourself. And so why is that? Why do they not mention it? One reason, I think, may be that they don't need to develop compassion for themselves, that they already have a very healthy sense of self-esteem. So, for example, the Dalai Lama, when he first heard Western people, Western teachers, and so we're talking about self-hatred, he was like, what? What's that? I think he never heard of it and was even surprised that such a thing could exist. So it seems not so common in Tibetan society. And also in the book, Kachimba says that he was brought up to believe that self-caring, caring for oneself, which is a type of compassion, is an instinct that all beings have. You know, like the monks are always saying, all sentient beings want to be happy, all sentient beings want to be free of suffering. So that's the view that everybody, every sentient being wants happiness, wants to be free of suffering. So we do have this kind of natural concern for ourselves. And that this is actually used in the way, in the methods for developing compassion. So we realize, well, just like I want to be happy, others want to be happy. Just as I don't want to suffer, others don't want to suffer. So the caring that one has for oneself is then extended to others. It's the basis for having compassion and concern for others. So that could be one reason why it's not specifically mentioned in the traditional teachings, you know, that we need to develop compassion for oneself. However, I have an idea about this, and that is that the renunciation, there's this state of mind or realization called renunciation, and that is described as the wish to free oneself from suffering and the causes of suffering. They call the suffering of samsara, and also the causes of suffering, which are the delusions and karma. So this is actually a really important attitude or state of mind to develop. We actually have to develop it. We have to wish ourselves to be free of suffering, wish to get ourselves out of suffering, out of samsara, before we can then wish all other beings to be free of suffering and the causes of suffering. So it's actually a kind of a prerequisite to the Bodhisattva's path. Yeah. So I think this so-called renunciation could be considered self-compassion, even though it's not called self-compassion, but it seems to be about that. You know, it's like realizing, I have suffering and I don't really want to suffer, and I shouldn't have to suffer. I don't deserve to suffer. I deserve to be free of suffering. And so I'm going to do what it takes. I'll do whatever it takes to get myself out of suffering, free of suffering and its causes, so I don't have to suffer anymore, and I can enjoy just peace and happiness. So you have to feel some degree of concern for yourself to be able to feel that way, and also a sense that I can do it and I deserve to do it. It's the right thing to do, and I will do it. So all those things are involved in renunciation. So I think that could be considered a kind of self-compassion.
Yeah, I just think it's a really settled point, because I think a lot of us Westerners who come to Buddhism and we hear about the term renunciation, it sounds like we're giving up all the fun and all the pleasures, and we also tend to perhaps apply it like that. At least I have been experiencing that in retreats as a way of like approaching asceticism and kind of restrain myself. So it becomes the opposite of self-compassion. It becomes a way of punishing myself.
Yeah.
So I think it's a very settled point that it can be viewed in the other way.
That's why actually some teachers prefer, instead of the term renunciation, which sounds a bit negative and it can lead to that kind of idea like punishing yourself, instead of that term they use the term determination to be free, which is actually more literal. It's a more literal translation of the Tibetan term Ngejung. The determination to get free of suffering and the causes of suffering. So it has a somewhat more positive connotation. I'm going to get free of suffering. I'm going to attain liberation, freedom from suffering. Yeah. Rather than, so it's focusing more on what you're going to get, the happiness and peace, and liberation that you're going to get, rather than what you have to give up. So that might help to change the terminology a little bit. Anyway, I've talked about this with a few people, and Thupten Chudran, who's another teacher and a friend of mine and has written many, many books, she agrees with me. She thinks the same, that renunciation or determination to be free is actually self-compassion. It could be called self-compassion, compassion for oneself. Because they do say that you have to have that before you can have compassion for others, before you can generate this bodhisattva's compassion extending to all sentient beings. So you have to wish yourself to be free of suffering. Then you extend that wish to be free from suffering to others. So I think that's another reason why it makes sense to call it self-compassion. So Thupten Jinpa also gives a nice description of self-compassion, what self-compassion is. He says, self-compassion is a gentle, caring, clear-seeing, yet non-judgmental orientation of our heart and mind toward our own suffering and needs. So it's an attitude of gentleness, caring. It's clear. It's not confused. It's seeing things clearly and yet not being judgmental. And it's concerned toward our own suffering and needs. And he says it's different from self-esteem. This is another state of mind that is sometimes confused with self-compassion, because he says self-esteem, on the other hand, is self-regard based on self-evaluation. I think self-esteem might be more cognitive, more intellectual. It's like you're looking at yourself and assessing yourself and thinking, well, I have this quality and that quality, I can do this and I can do that, I'm good at this, and so on and so forth. I'm successful, I'm, able to function and so forth. So then I'm a good person. So it's more based on our achievements and our abilities and our success, right? And whereas compassion, so it's also a little bit more self-esteem is more contingent. Like as long as we do have good qualities and we are successful and we do achieve things, then we can feel good about ourselves. But if we have failures or lack of success or not such good qualities, then we can lose our self-esteem. Whereas compassion, self-compassion, compassion for ourselves shouldn't be based on success or achievement or abilities. It's just because I exist, just because I'm here and I want to be happy and I don't want to suffer. I deserve compassion. I deserve to take care of myself. So there's a difference between compassion and self-esteem. And it's possible that a person might have self-esteem but not have self-compassion. They might have a very high regard for themselves and think they're very capable and so forth, but they may not be nice to themselves. That's possible, isn't it? Mm-hmm. So the two are not exactly the same. And he also says self-compassion is not self-pity. It's not feeling sorry for ourselves. So he says, in self-pity, we get caught up in our problems, we feel sorry for ourselves, and we can become oblivious to the world around us. Self-pity is a form of self-absorption, whereas self-compassion allows us to see our own difficulties within the larger context of shared human experiences. So self-pity is just focusing on me, and it can blow up our situation so that even a small problem appears overwhelming and unbearable. In contrast, self-compassion affords a sense of proportion that helps us deal with our predicaments and suffering in more constructive ways. Sorry. And he also says self-compassion is not self-gratification. The most compassionate thing we can do for ourselves may be to not eat the whole bag of donuts, or to not confuse wanting with needing and buying something we don't need. Okay, so being self-compassionate doesn't mean we're just pampering ourselves. That may not be compassionate. Self-compassion is not an impulse to treat ourselves, although sometimes mindfully and upon reflection, we might decide to have a treat. So we have to pamper. I mean, it's like with kids, it's nice to give them a treat sometimes, but you're always treating them. It may not be so good for them. But equally important, self-compassion is not beating ourselves up for eating the donuts or buying the thing or having a treat. Okay, so if we're really compassionate with ourselves, we don't go and eat the whole bag of donuts and then beat ourselves up. Okay, well, I did that, but maybe I won't do that again. So those are some things that self-compassion is not. Just to distinguish it. So again, I'll read what he says. It is. Self-compassion is a gentle, caring, clear-seeing, yet non-judgmental orientation of our heart and mind toward our own suffering and needs. And there's one thing else in this book which I found quite interesting and something I had never thought of before. So this is what Jimba says. He says this is what His Holiness says, actually. His Holiness was very surprised and even kind of shocked when he heard people talking about self-hatred. And he thought, how is that possible? If all sentient beings want happiness and don't want to suffer, how is it possible that people would hate themselves? It was like incoherent. And so Jimba says that now the Dalai Lama understands that self-hatred is rooted in the very same self-caring instinct. So it's not like the opposite or different from self-caring, but it's actually connected to self-caring. Hatred is a form of caring. We don't hate if we don't care. Self-hatred comes from caring a lot, but being unable to accept or forgive our imperfect self. That sounds interesting. And actually it reminds me of something I read. Václav Havel had said something, or written something about this, about the connection between attachment and hatred. He said when we have hatred for somebody, there's actually some attachment there that we can't let go of that person. We're obsessed with that person. We want that person to be different than we are. We don't just have indifference or uncaring or just ignoring, but we're really attached to them. We want them to be different. We want them to change. So I thought that's really interesting, and I think it's true. I think there's actually some attachment there. Maybe we could also say what he's saying here. There's actually some caring there. Because the person isn't the way we want them to be, and we're so frustrated with that, then it turns into hatred. So it seems to be similar to what His Holiness is saying, that actually we do care about ourselves, but we want ourselves to be different than we are. And we can't stand the fact that we aren't the way we want to be. We can't do things the way we want to. Something like that. Does that make sense?
That's very interesting.
Yeah. Something to think about. Okay, anyway, I thought after the break we could look more at some methods, ways in which we can develop more self-compassion. But maybe before we have the break, how about we just break into twos, although it's not going to quite work. Oh yeah. No, we have to have one group of threes and one group of twos. So just break into little groups and then share with your partner something that you learned or something you found interesting from what we have looked at so far. That may kind of spark your mind just for a couple of minutes. Vi er unge i gang.
Skolebænken.
I was kind of thinking just carry or continue. Something kind of was just saying that about something we can that most times, with something we don't like. We have version two. It's usually we copies we don't recognize and them or in ourselves. We have an aversion to or an attachment to that we
Or to try another one instead.
Oh, we have different size. Yeah,
Yeah, we
sure.
have back off, you might say.
It seems wider in the back.
So-
Yeah.
Even moving it like that makes noise,
Yeah.
when it's not on.
It's just very sensitive.
Very sensitive.
Maybe, you know. They're having some technical difficulties.
I don't know, sometimes it's depending what kind.
Let's see what they could do.
This is a totally different one.
So should this go in the back?
It's, we don't know, enough on the top.
Let's see if it's what you're gonna do.
No.
Hello, hello.
Is it better?
1, 2, 3, hello.
Let's see. It's not making that other noise.
So it's better?
No.
Yeah. Is that
Pretty loud.
Well, I just turned on a little bit. Just want to see.
Okay, so let's look at some ways that we can have more self-compassion to make it practical. So one thing is to try to develop mindfulness, pay attention to what's happening in our mind, and then be on the lookout for when we are not being compassionate. So, for example, if you become aware that there's this voice inside that's being critical and nasty, you know, like, oh, you make a mistake, you're always doing things wrong, and blah blah blah. So that kind of self-critical voice happening in your head, that's a sign of self-hatred, self-criticalness, which is the opposite to self-compassion. So that's one thing we could look out for. Another example might be if people are nice to you, if they praise you, if they give you gifts and so on, and you feel uncomfortable about that, like, I don't deserve this, you know, I'm not good enough to have this. So I think that's another sign of a lack of self-compassion. Another one might be if you kind of push yourself really hard in order to keep up with other people, to be as good as other people, or to win the approval of other people. So that could also be a sign of lack of self-compassion. And not giving yourself enough time to rest and, you know, take care of your own needs, because you feel like you always have to be keeping up with others or doing things for others and so on. You might even notice yourself being self-punishing, like Nicola was saying earlier, you know, kind of being really hard on yourself. So these are some possible signs or symptoms of a lack of self-compassion. And then in this book, Jinpa mentions some others. He says we can see signs of people's lack of self-compassion from disliking to loathing to hatred, just about everywhere we look in countless forms. To name a few, people stay in dysfunctional or abusive relationships because they blame themselves for what is not working and don't believe that they deserve better. People are uncomfortable in their bodies, don't like what they see in the mirror, and starve themselves, stuff themselves, or hurt themselves to distract themselves from their real pain. People don't care about themselves or tell themselves they don't, because as soon as they do, they feel overwhelmed. And people don't take care of themselves, neglecting their basic needs for sleep, nutrition, and exercise, and drive themselves harder and harder at work because they don't know how else to find validation as human beings. People lash out or shut down when they are criticized because they are all too ready to believe anything bad about themselves. But at the same time, they can't stand to hear anything. At the same time, they can't stand to hear anything bad about themselves because they lack a sense of self-worth to balance it. People feel like frauds, especially when things are going well. They live in fear that one day they will be exposed because they don't actually believe they deserve anything good. People feel anxious and depressed and desperate and don't know what to do. And they blame and berate themselves for this too. So these are signs of self-compassion. So if you notice any of these in yourselves, then you could take a step back from that and say, am I being kind to myself? Am I being compassionate to myself? And it might also be helpful to ask ourselves, if I were to treat a friend in this way, would that be right? Yeah. If I were to say these kind of things or do these kind of things to another person, especially a friend, how would I feel about that? Does that feel right? Does that feel good? So we'd probably say, no, I would never treat a friend that way. So then we can ask, why do I treat myself this way? Okay, so if you notice any of these things happening, then again, this is a sign of a lack of self-compassion. Then be careful that you don't then start beating yourself up for not being compassionate. Like, oh, I'm so bad to myself. I'm terrible. Look at what I'm doing. That just becomes another reason to beat yourself up. So really be careful about that. And instead try to change this attitude. Try to remember how you are with your friends. How do you talk to your friends? How do you feel about your friends? How do you treat your friends? And then say, well, this is how I should treat myself. I should try to be that way to myself, talk to myself that way. So we do have the experience of compassion. We do know what it's like to be kind and compassionate because we are that way, at least sometimes with some people. So if we can get in touch with that feeling and then understand that's what I need to have towards myself. No problem?
Yes, we have a problem.
Well, just regarding this, I need to be 100% sure if the failure can be figured tonight before you leave. So if you could stop at maybe 3-5 minutes.
Okay.
That would,
Okay.
so.
So anyway, the point I'm trying to make is try to notice, try to observe, try to be aware of a lack of self-compassion or even actual self-hatred, self-criticalness when that is happening in your experience. And at least understand, it can take a lot of time to stop this habit, but the first step is to become aware of it, to notice when it's happening and to be aware that, oh, this isn't healthy. This isn't the way I should be treating myself. Yeah, so that's one very important step. And then another thing is when we do have an experience of compassion for another person, or another being, could be an animal, for example, then we could, it's like an extra step to take, but we could then, get in touch with that feeling, focus on that feeling, and then turn it around and extend it to oneself. we even say to ourselves, just as I feel this way towards that person, may I feel this way towards myself. May I have the same feeling of kindness and gentleness and compassion towards myself. And then your mind may freak out. I don't deserve it. But again, that's just, the old habit of self-hatred. And it is just a habit, and habits can be changed. It is possible. We say this in Buddhism, and it's definitely possible. I know it myself. I've experienced it myself. But they also say it in neuroscience. The brain is plastic. You can change the way your brain works. You can change even deeply ingrained habits and attitudes and so forth. So it is possible. So we just have to keep doing it again and again and again. And then slowly over time, we will see it changing. Then self-compassion is particularly important when we are experiencing suffering, when we're having some painful experience, some bad experience. So when that is happening, then the usual response might be either to reject it, deny it, ignore it, say, oh, go away, I don't want you. Or, like trying to push it away or trying to run away from it. We want to avoid it. We don't want to deal with our suffering. We don't want to face our suffering. So that's one attitude, rejection. The other attitude, which is kind of the opposite, is to just get totally overwhelmed by it, totally caught up in it, totally miserable. Oh, poor me, like he was talking about in the book, self-pity. Oh, poor me, isn't this terrible? And just get so absorbed in our suffering. But that's not helpful. So neither of those two methods are helpful. Just trying to push it away doesn't work. It's not going to go away by itself. And then getting totally caught up in it is also not helpful. That's just going to make us feel worse. So in between those two kind of extremes is a third option, and that is to simply accept and acknowledge suffering and sit with it, be with it. Now that's very counterintuitive because then we tend to think, but doesn't that mean I'm going to suffer more? Actually, it doesn't. It's kind of magical. If you can just slow down and stop and breathe, doing breathing is like a breathing meditation. Just sit there and breathe. Be aware of your breath coming in, going out, and so on. And that really calms your mind down. And at the same time, accept suffering, accept the problem. Just sit there with it, be with it, accept it. In the same way that, let's say, a friend or a little child or a little animal is unhappy, is confused, is frightened, just needs some help, some attention. So you sit down and you take that person, close to you and just give them the kindness and the caring that they need. And they'll find they'll calm down. They calm down. So it's the same with your own mind. You just give your mind the attention it needs, the care that it needs, the compassion that it needs. It will calm down. So it's not easy to do, but it's something we can learn to do. And Kristin Neff, who I mentioned at the beginning, this American psychologist who's done research. She and her colleagues spent about 10 years doing research on self-compassion. And this is the main material in her book, which is called Self-Compassion. And it's a really wonderful book, all about self-compassion, but she also brings in her own story, her own experiences, which makes it very interesting. And she also has a website, which is selfcompassion.org. And on the website, there's lots of materials right there. There's meditations you can listen to, there's articles you can read, there's it's kind of online course you can follow. So if you're really interested in more about this topic, you can find it on the website. But anyway, just to synthesize or simplify the advice that she gives, she says there's three things If you can do just one of them, it's good. But if you can do two or all three, then it's really good. Three things to have compassion for yourself when it comes to your suffering. One is mindfulness. Mindfulness simply means acceptance. Acceptance that there is suffering. And she suggests using like a phrase. The one that she uses, that she says you could make your own, is just to say to yourself, this is a moment of suffering. This is a moment of suffering. This is an experience of suffering. So something like that. So just saying that to yourself means that you're being aware, being attentive, being accepting the fact that there's suffering right now. You're not rejecting, you're not pushing it away, you're not running away from it. Simply. And then the second thing she mentions is having the awareness that you're not alone. There's nothing going on with suffering. Lots of other people are suffering too. Suffering is part of our shared experiences as human beings. It's part of our humanity, our common humanity. So again, she suggests just saying a phrase to yourself like, suffering is part of life. Or suffering is part of being human. So again, you can make up your own phrase, but something that will help you realize that this experience you're having, something isolated. You're not isolated from other people, other human beings, other beings, but something everybody experiences, everybody shares. So that's also a very important aspect of self-compassion. And also it helps you to have more compassion for others when you realize others have suffering too. I have suffering and I deserve compassion. Others have suffering and you deserve compassion too. And then the third thing is actual self-compassion. And she suggests the phrase, may I be kind to myself. May I be kind to myself in this moment. Or again, you could change the phrase according to whatever the situation might be. For example, if you made a mistake or you did something wrong, you did something stupid, then you could say, may I forgive myself? May I forgive myself? Or may I give myself what I need right now? So it's just extending that attitude of warmth and kindness and compassion and care to yourself. So those are the three things: mindfulness, shared humanity, shared experience of being human, and being kind to oneself, having self-compassion. So I'm just summarizing that, but in her book, she has a whole chapter about each one of those things. This one. So that, let me just do a little meditation on this. The last few minutes that we have, so we could bring to mind some difficulty or problem that we may be having in our life right now, and just try to give compassion to ourselves regarding this. So make yourselves comfortable. Pay attention to the breath, coming in, going out. Let your mind settle and relax within your body. Just be aware of the gentle rhythm of the breathing, flowing in and flowing out. Now, see if you can think of some problem that you might be having. It doesn't need to be a huge problem. It could just be maybe you feel tired, or maybe you have some pain or discomfort in your body. Maybe there's some little problem happening in your life with one of your friends or one of your relatives, or with your job. Just think of some current problem or issue in your life and bring it to mind And see if you can notice how your mind responds or reacts to it. So it's sort of cringe and feel, oh, I don't want this, I don't like this, I wish it would go away, I wish I didn't have this in my life. Or does it feel overwhelmed, as if this problem is like a big tsunami wave that's crashing over you and carrying you away, and you're just kind of helplessly carried away, caught up in it? So if you do notice either or both of those reactions, let's see if you can put them aside for now. And instead, see if you can just bring a kind of gentle and attentive and interested awareness to the actual experience. Whether it's physical experience or mental, emotional experience, see if you can just allow it to be there, allow it to be present without rejecting or pushing it away, without being afraid of it. Just let it be there. And continue to be aware of your breath coming in and going out. But at the same time, allow that problem to be there. Just as if it's a friend who's got a problem. You don't want to push them away, but you want to give them some attention, some care, some time. Then, if you want, you can say to yourself, this is a moment of suffering. And then say to yourself, suffering is part of life, part of my experience of being human that I share with all other human beings. All of us have suffering sometimes. And then say to yourself, may I be kind to myself in this moment. May I treat myself with kindness right now. So the actual suffering and the problem may not go away, but your mind, your attitude changes towards it. You have a different relationship with it, a more compassionate, a more harmonious relationship. And that itself can reduce the suffering and make you feel better, more peaceful, more calm. Okay, so now let's conclude this session tonight by making a dedication of the positive energy we've created. So make an effort to come here, sit and listen, and do meditation, think about the teachings and talk about them and so on. So what we've done here tonight, where we've spent our time, is actually something really good and really positive. Talking about how to have more compassion for ourselves, for others, for the world, and so on. This is a really good thing to do, and it's a way to create good energy, positive energy. So now let's dedicate this positive energy by sharing it with others. Simply by making a wish, the aspiration that this positive energy we've created will spread out from us to others and help them as well as ourselves to have more peace, more happiness, more freedom from suffering and confusion, and help us all get closer to enlightenment, which is the fulfillment of our highest potential. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.